And welcome back to part 10 of Final Fantasy 15. Remember when I did Final Fantasy 10 live streams on this channel? Those were the days. That bit, I say that knowing full well that there was a small percentage of people and people subscribed to me hoping for more of that. And maybe one day I'll go back to it, but if I'm honest, and you can kind of see it shine through in some of the later live streams of it, I wasn't enjoying it anywhere near as much as I thought I would. And so I really struggled to want to push myself to continue doing them. Plus, on my schedule, I have time to do recordings, but I usually don't have time for a 2-hour live stream. And so it was a bit of a conundrum that I could just take as a mistake on the chin, as something I should have thought more about before diving into back in 2015. And I'm sorry if you're one of those people who did sit down and watch those. I do know there was like 4 of you who actually sat down and watched them all from start to finish. And a lot of people who... Well, I say a lot of people, 30 odd is not that many, but for the sake of my channel, that's a lot of people who actually hung around and watched them afterwards. Anyway, down here, that giant snake enemy over there, don't bother. If you've been following along, you will not be a high enough level to confidently take it on. It'll just be a lot of deaths and unnecessary heartache, so just move on and ignore it. These guys over here, though, these guys you can deal with. You should be able to deal with them relatively easily. Well, I say, 'cause they're around our level. So maybe one day I'll come back to the Final Fantasy X live streams. The save, I still have the save file. I haven't touched it or messed with it or anything like that. It's still there, so I could go back to it if I wanted to. It's just I'm not up for it yet. Maybe one day. That being said, I do want to try and make some time for some live streams every now and then. I doubt I'll be able to anywhere near as often, if I will at all, but I would like to at least to do the odd one here and there. Because I know, like with Celeste, I was planning on live streaming the B-sides because they're pretty tough, and I would have thought, oh, that'd be something to watch, me getting my ass kicked to me by the levels live. But then I thought how long some of the later ones are and how long I could be stuck on them. I just eventually decided against it. I was like, no, I can't spend forever with it, and my schedule involves, you know, actually having a job and working. I'm not a college kid anymore. That being said, I swapped to Prompto here just to try and get things moving along a bit quicker, because Prompto, I would say when you know how to use it, but it's really not that hard to use. Just stun an enemy and spam triangle. Kind of makes him a bit broken outside of his story, but whatever.
That's it.
What's what?
I've come up with a new recipe.
I could taste test for you.
That's it.
What's what?
I've come up with a new recipe.
Can't wait to try it.
That's 2 shots, people. He said it twice, back to back, because I picked up the ingredient, and which was one recipe, and the loot that the enemy dropped was for another recipe. Yeah, that can happen, and you're stuck in that until he finishes talking. You can see why people made it a joke. If you didn't play Final Fantasy 15 but just saw people saying that's it, I've come up with a new recipe a whole bunch, there's your reason why, because you can't escape it. It's just part of the Final Fantasy legend now at this point, Ignis. But now as we approach the Waterfall cave, the reason why I've swapped the Prompto in the end back in that fight was to speed it along, but not just for the sake of getting that fight through, it's because I was aware that going through the Glacial Grotto, it's a bit of a long dungeon. The Waterfall cave is a bit of a long one. It takes a little bit of a while, and I knew this part would probably be over half an hour. And so I knew spending forever messing around with enemies outside wouldn't help me, because I wanted to get the whole dungeon done in one part.
Sarcasm.
And this dungeon you can actually get lost into and lose your bearings, so be wary. The mini-map in the top right is helpful, but it will only get you so far. It will show the paths, but not how to get to the paths, so to speak. So you just need to be careful that you don't lose your bearings, because I think I do once. There's a point where I go into a dead end, but I kind of, like, as I reached it, realised where I went wrong, and so don't get lost properly. But it is possible to just lose your bearings and lose where you're supposed to go in this dungeon if you're not careful, especially because it's dark. It's a cave, so everything kind of looks similar, and you'll see what I mean when we get more to it. There's a lot of tunnels, and then later on there's a big open space with a lot of exits through it. It's very easy to just lose where you're supposed to be and lose where you are on the map and just you have to sit and go, hang on a minute, what? And you have to fix yourself a little. So these are ice, so you will slide straight down them because it's sloped, so of course you do. And down here there's some nice imps to greet us. Oh, another thing that's worth mentioning, because of the design of this dungeon, for some reason the AI pathing on your teammates isn't that great. So if there's ever a point where you go into a fight and realise that you either can't swap to your teammates or can't do their techniques or just can't see them, that's because they've got stuck in a corner like 5 rooms back and they just haven't got to you yet. The only real way to fix it is find Ignis and then do regroup. That's all I can really say to think do. Because Ignis is the only one who seems to be able to keep up with you. Well, at least that's what I found through my playthroughs. The other two would just completely lose you for some reason if you give them the chance. And you do see it in this part, I remember as much. Also, as you can tell, the imps, if you can get away with not fighting them, don't bother, because they drop so non-existent experience. And all they do is just poison you or run around or steal your items sometimes if you let them.
I really hope we didn't come here for nothing.
That's alright, Prompto, we didn't. The objective tells you it's not here. This ice path, be careful where you go down it, because you need to land on something halfway down. This. Like, if you just keep on going right down to the bottom, the path will circle and take you back around to the top to go down it again. Because you need to land on this ledge so you can get access to more of the pathway. Like a fool, I decided to go left first, not paying attention to the map, which kind of indicates that if I'd gone right, it would have taken me to a dead end and probably a good item. But I assumed that left would have been the dead end, so I went left instead. Because that's the thing, in any kind of fantasy game, well, any kind of RPG full stop, really. You can, if you could have the option to go the right way or the wrong way, you tend to go the wrong way first because there might be good loot. And even if there isn't, you'll probably bump into an enemy that'll get you some extra experience, so it's still not 100% terrible, pointless sort of thing. Well, as we go under here, because that's totally not a loading zone.
Your tips just got frosted, dude.
Really?
How's it look?
That's something worth mentioning. When you look at some of the tech demo trailers of Final Fantasy 15 on the build up to launch, one of the things they showed was every time you transition through those things, everything sorry, my throat went a little then. Everything Noxus does reacts to the walls, the ceiling and everything, but none of that carried on to the final version, weirdly enough, despite the fact they made such a point in showing it in the tech demo trailer. Like, there was a point where he goes through like a tight wall and he puts his hand on the wall and you see all his fingers bounce over individual rock as he goes through it. That doesn't happen at all. They completely got rid of it. I don't know what happened. I don't know whether it's just because they were pressed for time and so it wasn't finished, so they just decided to abandon it or what. But it was just something I noticed that was always odd, because they made such a big deal out of it. Like, if it was something that was a small throwaway detail, then I would have ignored it, but they made a point of highlighting everything, and there's points in this game that highlights that it was still there for a long while before it got rid of, like that point of, hey, your frost got tipped, your tips got frosted. Even when I get what Prompto said properly, where like his hair would actually have reacted to the ceiling, but it didn't at all. And it's just weird. I don't get it. I know I can understand some things just not making the cut and sometimes things get abandoned, but if you make such a big provident point of it, make sure it stays. Like, you're not Ubisoft, and where you make the game look super beautiful and then just strip away everything that you had graphically wise because that was just for E3. Like, come on, you have a bit of class, Square Enix. Well, at least you did. You still got some, but you've got a few holes in it now. You just got to be careful how you handle yourself. Don't do many more episodic games and we'll be fine. Seriously, that still to this day bugged me. Both Hitman and Final Fantasy VII Remake, if that ever comes out at this point, being episodic, just ugh. Especially because I was a huge Hitman fan, and when I saw that went episodic, it just hurt. It's just like, oh great, so I'm not even going to get the full package. And then they want the full package price if you want the thing. They just claim it's the season pass. It's like, fuck off. And they're going to do the same with the 7 remake, which is a shame, because don't get me wrong, I don't think 7's the best one. I'm not one of those guys who thinks it's the best one, but I know it's the most influential, and I know how massive of an impact it made on the entire JRPG genre at its time. It redefined the genre of its time. When you look at what JRPGs were before it and what it was afterwards, yeah, you can tell. Sort of like DMC3 and any hack and slash. You can tell it made an impact, and you can tell it was genre defining. But it's still not my favourite. My favourite's 4. It would have been 5 if it wasn't for 5's god-awful final dungeon. Seriously, the void at the end of Final Fantasy V was terrible in my opinion. I didn't enjoy it at all. I thought it was just a giant time sink with way too many bosses that blocked off checkpoints, so you had to actually beat them to get the save. 2 super bosses, both of which you probably died to and stumbled into by complete accident on your first playthrough, because a mega weapon is just sitting there in the middle of a room, so you probably go and investigate him, not realizing a mega weapon is a super boss that's stronger than the final boss. And Shinryu's in a treasure chest, the final treasure chest of the game, where the path splits in 2. You'll go left, well, you might go left, notice it's on the right, and you think, it's right there, I'll go get it. And since it's before a save point, you just get absolutely demolished because he's in the chest. And Shinryu is like, before the fancy HD mobile port that added like Shinryu X and Neo Shinryu and all that rubbish, he was the hardest fight in the series. Like in the franchise, full stop. Is the reason why they made him the final boss in the most recent Dissidia NT. Even if that game was boring as hell, they made him the final boss because they understood and respected that he was the most powerful thing in the franchise. He was the only dragon stronger than Bahamut, for goodness sake. But just that whole dungeon, just ugh. I didn't enjoy it at all. It just dragged. Even when you've done all the bosses, if you just start the dungeon sprint from one end to the other, it takes you like an hour. And it's all reused assets, it's all reused dungeons just thrown together because it's the void. Only the last area is truly new and unique, and even then, it's the shortest one. The only thing interesting of the last chunk is it had those little enemies that were like 1 pixel big. And I'm not even kidding, you couldn't even see them on the screen. It's just when they went to do an attack, you'd see a pixel on the screen flash white for a second. That if you could somehow kill them, gave you a mountain ton of job points. So if you hadn't maxed out all your jobs at that point, you could there. And that ended up ruining it. That stopped me from becoming my favourite, because up until that moment I enjoyed every second of it. But 4, I do genuinely enjoy every second of it. And on the boot it's got more interesting characters, because that's the only thing that I think hurt 5. Because 5 wanted to be a little bit more almost self-insert about it, like these are your characters. It felt like a little less time was put into the 4, well technically 5 main heroes, but I digress. What we got in 4 and 6 on the other side of the SNES trilogy more than makes up for what 5 was missing. Even if I really struggle to enjoy 6. And I know I'm in the minority of that, but I just think the second half of 6 is boring. Well, it's fine if you're not trying to get the best ending. It's only when you try and get every single character alive, it becomes boring and frustrating. Because the Phoenix Cave is boring. A lot of people said, oh, it's the worst dungeon ever. It's not, it's just boring. It's not hard or challenging, anything like that. It's the first place I went to, so I was the lowest level I could have been, and so I did it with not much effort. It's the fucking magic tower that's a piece of hell. The magic tower is so painful, because even if you've got good magic, all you need is one unfortunate strike. One mistime, one thing to just not fold the way you want to. And it's no like magic way out. It's a big dungeon. You have to climb up loads of identical floors, get the actual reward at the end, and then go back through it backwards all the way down. It's just not fun. It's so terrible. And in the remake they added a dungeon where they make you fight 7 dragons. They make you fight the 7 dragons again, but they're much stronger, and when you beat them all you unlock a super boss that's got like 10 million health. That takes an hour to beat. I don't know how much health he actually has. I just know when I fought him it took over 50 minutes. And I had it a time check as well to make sure, because I'd heard legends of it. And then they added this extra dungeon as well where it's just like 100 floors of every single fight, and it ends on another fight with that guy. It's just, so the second half of Final Fantasy VI, so you're going for the true ending of getting all the characters, drained the hell out of me, and I just don't enjoy it, and I never go back to 6 nowadays. If I'm going to go back to anything from the SNES trilogy, it'll be 4 or 5, it'll never be 6. Which is a shame, because 6, in a lot of people's eyes, is the best, it's the fan favourite, and I just couldn't click with it. But in saying that, my opinion of Final Fantasy 3 has changed a lot. I know I've mentioned it before, but I used to test Final Fantasy 3. So I played the original NES version, I just didn't like it at all. I thought it was a bad game straight up. But I don't know how much was changed other than the graphics between the PSP and remake and the original. But the PSP remake, I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favourite Final Fantasies now because of it. It's definitely in the top 5 or 6. It was just great fun to mess around with. As we continue our escapade. So this thing's not too bad, so don't worry about it. You fought one in the last dungeon actually. The one that Core took you to at the end of chapter 2. I just didn't mention it because just like this time it's kind of pointless. It's not a threat.
You ready for this? Boom!
And it's glitching out on the floor anyway. But then after that, like, I say that, my opinion flipped of 2 as well. 2 I used to really enjoy, but I'm not a kid with extreme patience anymore. So when I went back and played it, I realised just how patient I was as a kid, because that game is the most grind-heavy game on the planet. Because every single stat is directly tied to things happening. You have to take so many hits for your HP to get bigger and your defense to get better. You have to use physical attacks so many times for your attack stat to go up by a point. You have to use magic so many times for it to go up by a point. You have to be hit by magic so much. You have to run away from fights so many times for your agility to go up. So your agility / evasion stat was probably at 0 for most of the game. It was just the biggest slog of a grind, especially because it was like 100 points to get a single point up in your stat in the original release. Yeah, they lowered it to 10 from the PSP version onwards, but it's still an absolute grind, because there was a glitch back when it was 100 where as long as you put in the input and then backed out of it, they got the point. So there's something stopping you and just like putting it on repeat and just going attack, 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 back, 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 attack, 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 back, 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 sort of thing. Just rinse and repeat until you did it like so many thousands of times, and then there you go, you're ready. But it was just that game takes like 20 hours too long, and all of that 20 hours is spent of you wasting time mashing buttons. It's not fun at all.
To a dead end.
Oh, by the way, this is the dead end I was on about. I hit this point thinking I'd gone the right way, and just have a little moment where I was like, where was I supposed to go? And then I end up backtracking a little bit until I find it, because I can see there's a path up there, so I just follow it round. I mean, I guess it's a good thing that I always end up talking about Final Fantasy, but I need to talk about other subjects. Because this game's Final Fantasy 15 is too long for me to only talk about older Final Fantasies. I need to talk about 15. I enjoy this dungeon. There. I genuinely enjoy this dungeon because it feels like something that would be in classic Final Fantasy. It's a bit of a maze, you can lose your bearings, and there's a lot of stuff everywhere, and there's enemies just waiting around every corner, yet there's a lot of loot around if you know where to look. It feels like classic Final Fantasy, and I appreciate that, because none of the 13 trilogy did it. Like, they tried it, but they never once gave me that feeling of Final Fantasy. This dungeon genuinely gave me a Final Fantasy feeling.
Don't answer. Don't know where we came from. Don't know where we're going.
But I think we're supposed to go over here, if I remember rightly. Well, I hope I'm going the right way, because I said this is all post. And Final Fantasy 12 I've got a new opinion of as well. I still feel the game's way too long, but I enjoy it for what they were trying to do at the time. With that being said, I could only enjoy it through the Zodiac Age, through the PS4 remake. The original version, I tried playing the original version again afterwards, and no, there's so much wrong with it, I just don't enjoy it. But the remake, just other than adding all the international stuff that originally was Japan and UK only, they added a few extra things as well on the back to just smoothen the experience and make it better, like, you know, being able to speed it up, because the game is the slowest moving game ever, and so they gave you the option to make the game run at twice and quadruple speed. And if I ever was to do a Let's Play of Final Fantasy 12, which to be honest I doubt it because of how much the game drags, I hope you'd understand that the game would permanently be on double speed. I won't put it to quad, because quad does actually start to get a bit fast and you can maybe make a mistake and things like that, but double speed genuinely feels like the speed the whole game should have been. And it's a shame when that happens in a game, but it genuinely does feel like it should have been the speed the game should have started at. It's not like, say, turbo mode in Devil May Cry, where I can live with both. Both of them feel natural in their own sort of way, whether you use it or not. But no, if you're playing on normal, the game's way too slow. To be fair, I think Bravely Default had that same issue as well. The moment you go to double speed, you never turn back because normal speed's just too slow. Speaking of which, I really hope Oh, by the way, I'm glad. I've got to interrupt myself. Did you see that? Did you see that? If you didn't, rewind it a second. I didn't see that Ronan at all. And Ronan, at this point in the game, is the most dangerous enemy. He can one-shot any of you in a single, like, without a second thought. And by pure coincidence, I tapped square to dodge, and it was perfectly timed to guard it. And I didn't realise it was there. My heart jumped because I know how dangerous those guys are, and it just appeared on the screen. You see that Gladio's dead. But back to what I was saying. After that jump scare with the Ronin, I really hope Bravely Third comes around soon. Now Octopath Traveler is, I hope they go back and finish the trilogy. Whether they go back and put it on the 3DS, I don't know. Like, Persona Q2 has been given a lot of jip it doesn't deserve for being on the 3DS despite it being 2018. Which I just think, get over yourselves. It's the most recent console, the most recent handheld Nintendo have. They're not going to move it to the Switch. At least not yet. But it still sells well, people still play it, why not? It's like how the PS2 is still getting games to this very bloody day. It's because people still have it and don't mind buying it, so there's not like it's a waste of revenue. It's not like they're losing units for it, they might as well. But if Bravely Third comes around, they've been hinting, because when they did the 5th anniversary of the Bravely series, it was a Dia on the Switch. And so they've been hinting that they've been moving to the Switch, or at least major gen consoles. And I hope so, but I hope just not Switch. Like, the Bravely series doesn't have any licensing deals with Nintendo that it has to be on a Nintendo platform. They just chose to make it on the 3DS at the time. So I really hope, if they do decide to do it, firstly they do sort of like a HD remaster at default, and second, and they just put it on all consoles or PC or something like that, not just Switch. Because Octopath Traveler is licensed with Nintendo, but the Bravely series are not. They're licensed to Square. Also, this is sort of your final challenge area here. You get 3 waves of enemies. It's the same sort of setup, just more of them in each wave, so kind of what you expect from a wave-by-wave enemies. But these Octo guys, speaking of octopuses and Octopaths, these guys can be quite troublesome because they can reverse your controls with confusion, and their grabs can usually kill you because they will hold on to you for a while. You have to... I can't remember if you have to mash a button or shake the left stick, because I don't think I get caught, so I don't remember, because I'm just too good like that. But yeah, they do tend to kill you, and if they put you into that stunned state, they won't just let you go. They'll keep hold of you and put you into a straight death state, which is Phoenix down or bust, especially if you're Noctis. Whoever you have set as your main character, if they get put into a death state, you have to immediately use a Phoenix, otherwise it will game over you. Unlike with your teammates, it doesn't matter. It does the Persona system of if the main character goes down, it's over no matter what. But that's what kind of makes the game kind of really easy with this. The fact that you always have the safety net of, as long as you have at least one Phoenix, you can immediately use it the moment you go down. Like, if they made, like, yeah, you can always say, oh yeah, but it's just the you could just not use it. But the fact that they put the option there is why it kind of makes the game really easy. If there was a hard mode that disabled that entirely and just made everything, you know, harder, I'd happily play it because it needs it. The fact that this game started with easy and normal as its only difficulties and still only has that is just terrible. I have no idea why they decided against any kind of hard mode. Like, trying to make it a Final Fantasy game for veterans and newcomers, you kind of forgot the veterans by making the game piss easy. There's a way of doing it, and it's not this. People don't mind the challenge. You would have thought people would have got the hint after how well the Dark Souls series sold, that people don't mind a bloody challenge, or how much excitement there is around DMC. Like, just, you don't assume the audience are idiots that can't look after themselves. Make something tough. Just because DSP exists doesn't mean we all play like him. Yeah, but enough about that. This is still going. I believe at one point I'd do a chain strike again, or chain link, or whatever it's called, thinking that it might be the last one as the climactic ending, and then I turn around and there's just more. But I use the shield a bit as well, just because I haven't really shown it off that much. So you can sit behind it as well, like cover, which is really cool. That's the grab, by the way. That's the one, if you get caught by it, you feel it. Because it will probably kill you. And it can also buff itself as well, which, if you let the fight go on long enough for that to happen, then that's kind of your own fault, but still. Yeah, that one I just decide to kill. I just don't. And you get quite a healthy amount of experience for it. And then here's our door that we need to get. The Tomb of the Wanderer. What weapon's this one? Right, I predicted last part it was the something that looks like a bow, but it turns into 2 swords. Yes, I think it turns into 2 swords. I think it is. Yeah, it is. It's the one that sort of looks like a bow. Whereas they're more of a double-sided spear more than anything, but I knew what I meant. Oof. And now we have 4, we have enough for the armiger. The armiger is a pretty neat, actually, thing like that. It's a nice way to show off. When you have more than 4, you have a meter surrounding your weapons that's like circles around it as it shows. You hit both bumpers when you're ready and you'll go into it. Through it, you can essentially go into God mode. You become ridiculously powerful. You become immortal. Do ridiculous damage, attack really fast, and can link it up with your teammates. Also, since I don't skip to the entrance, I get this cutscene here. If you skip to the entrance, it will play this at the entrance. Because it's dynamic. Oh, I wonder what that is. It's almost like we've seen that 100 times now. It's the meteorite, if you somehow didn't guess.
What is it?
And
It's where in the plots we should be heading next.
the meteor?
Keyword should.
You saw the disc of Corthis.
And I'm going to show off the vault door as well, because there is one down here. But the armiger's really great. They made it even better in the Royal Edition, but I won't be able to talk about that really for that much. Just understand they made it better in the Royal Pack. And I think I'll just buy everything if I remember rightly. Yeah, gain AP for using the armiger as well, that's handy. I've got to change the prompto, I've got to change to Iggy. So I think I decided to start working towards getting Gladio. I haven't got him yet, I haven't got enough for him yet.
Get back to Lestal.
But start working against him, because I've shown off Iggy and Prompto quite enough now. It's probably a good time to show off Gladio as well while I'm at it. And I compare stats between them quickly just so you guys can see it and make the decision for yourself whether you want to use it or not. I favour against it because I prefer the shield, but it's there. And by the way, the secret path is just if you go in the opposite corner to the one you was at and follow this thin trail path around, you can see it on the map.
Oh,
Here's the vault door.
hey, look what we have here. Awesome.
There's 8 of these in the game, and this is our second, so make a note or make a piece of memory, because there's a very, very long side quest right at the very end of the game. Well, it's post-game actually, that you could decide to do if you want. I'm undecided whether I'll do it or not, just because they're all exactly the same. Once you've done one, you've done them all, just they're a little bit harder and they're very repetitive. So I might do one to show it off, but I won't do them all. But as we leave, it's now the evening, so we've made good of today. We got a whole dungeon done, but I think I decide. This fight I think I run away from in the end because I just want to get a move on.
Should be easy for you.
I think I was aware that I was around the half-hour mark at this point, and so just decided to get a move on. Also, attack from the behind objective marker. Look at this. I hit this thing up from the behind loads of times, but it's only when it gives you the bonus on the screen, when it lights it up on the screen, that it actually gives it to you. Which I think is so stupid. Look, I get that. I get when it comes up with the blindside link, then it gives it to you. Any other time, doesn't care. But it gives you 20 AP. When the game launched, it would have given you 1. I have no idea why they decided to make the game so much more generous with AP. Yeah, I know it was a bit of a grind to get them, but it wasn't that bad. And you'd get all the ones you wanted before you finished the game anyway. Yeah, I just leave. I get my AP and bugger off. But yeah, like, I don't know what update it was, because I didn't really play this game that much until all the updates are out, and even then I didn't touch Comrades until like Royal Pack was like a month out, if I remember rightly. But still, like, so I didn't even touch episode Ignis until around the same time as well. Like, after I beat this game I enjoyed it, but I kind of dropped it. I came back for Gladio, I came back for Prompto, But I just couldn't be bothered from that point onwards, and eventually I did it and got back into it, and then wanted to do this Let's Play because I remembered why I wanted to do it in the first place. Because back when I originally played through it, I had every intention of Let's Playing it, but when I found out that it was incomplete and they planned on completing it over time, I decided to wait. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I did, because the 3 episodes are pretty fun. I do enjoy all 3 of them. I have my issues with them, but I do enjoy them. And the Royal Pack, what that adds, is great fun and really does complete the story, I feel. Right, now this actually works in my favour. Iggy says, let's go back to the hotel.
The roads are perilous at night.
Where he says head back into town. Thankfully, he does genuinely mean Lestalem, so I can agree, because I know how the AI works and where he means, and he will just take us back to Lestalem like that.
Back to town.
Well then.
It's a very handy thing. It's like using Dig to return to a Pokemon Center in Pokemon, knowing that the last Pokemon Center you went to was 3 towns off, so you can skip the journey.
What, too embarrassed to show your scrawny body?
Hey, I got muscle. You just can't see it.
On my blind playthrough, that group of dialogue played much more often. Yet in this, that's the first time it played. I was genuinely surprised. I heard it. I was like, oh wait, that's a line. That's dialogue. I do feel they added more dialogue over the updates to try and not make it as repetitive. You still get that's it, I've come up with a new recipe way too much, but I think they're going to keep that for the meme at this point. But we can head over and report to Talcott, because that little kid tipped us off in the first place. We can report to him and tell him just, yeah, he did good. And I think I mentioned it last part, but I said there was a point where the game kind of stops for a minute and I wasn't sure of it. I think it's here. Like after the cutscene, there's a point where the game just kind of stops.
Welcome back.
Your story came to a happy end.
Yay.
Well.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah, here. The game just kind of stops. The cutscene's supposed to kick in here.
Welcome.
So I'm just kind of like, eh? What's going on? And it's only when I start the move it kicks in. And that's your even more of a clear sign. Go to the meteor.
Not again.
What's the matter? You alright?
You'll be fine, don't worry.
Yeah, there is no need to worry.
Take a closer look at this so-called disc.
Then look no further than the Outlook. We can use the viewer things.
No substitute for being on site, but it would be a start. Let's see what we can glean of Nock's condition.
Yeah. But we'll worry about that in the future, because I've got more side stuff I want to do now. We're a bit stronger and a bit more capable, so I'm going to rest tonight, and next time we're going to hunt down another Royal Arm.
Let's call it a day.
I'm not going to spoil which one,
Long last.
but we are going to hunt down another one, because there's actually quite a few areas we can go to. I say it every time, but we're not doing Costelmark yet, because I still have no clue how I'm handling Costelmark, because it's a higher level requirement than the final boss. Yeah, I know I might be able to get away with it because some of the new stuff in Royal Edition makes the difference, but I'm still a bit off. We'll see. Alright, what pictures did we get? Well, what pictures did I save? That's a cool one. Did I save that one? No, I didn't. Alright. I saved that one. I saved the crapper one.
Yikes.
Anyway, next time on Final Fantasy 15.
I swear half your photos are selfies.
Yeah, they are. Next time on Final Fantasy 15, we're going to head after another Royal Arm. But until then, you guys take care now.